Welcome back to the Seeing Red podcast. I'm your host, Garrett Fulce. Thank you so much for joining me today. I got a few things to talk about. There's a small little referendum going on across America right now, trying to elect the next president of the United States. We're going to have a number 47. Are we going to have the first president to serve non-consecutive terms since the 1800s? Or are we going to have our first black woman president or our first woman president? We don't know yet. Early voting has started pretty much everywhere that has early voting. It's in Texas right now. If you are in Texas and listening to this, you can go vote if you'd like to. I'd strongly encourage you to do it before the last couple of days of early voting or election day. Lines will be significantly shorter if you do it that way. But you should probably go vote. And I would strongly recommend you vote for Republican candidates up and down the ballot. That's my personal preference of what you do. Now, I know that not all of our viewers are Republicans, and I know a lot of our viewers might decide to split ticket. You do whatever is your prerogative. I don't think anything I'm going to say on this show is going to change your mind. I'm not going to try. But if you haven't voted yet, make sure you do it. Bank your vote, get it over with, and that way you can go through election day on your own. And I will also say, if you care about the outcomes of the elections, even beyond just a little bit, just if you want to go above and beyond, just doing your civic duty, you can go to a polling location and hold a sign for a candidate of your choosing. I would strongly recommend you do that. Go knock on some doors, make some phone calls. That's what the real work of actually getting somebody elected is going to do. It isn't just voting. If you really want to have an impact, you need to be personally texting your friends, at least 10 of them, saying, hey, have you voted yet? Especially the ones who you know are going to vote the same way you want them to. Whether they're in your state, they're in a swing state, at a certain level, it just matters that you do the work. And when people ask you why, you tell them the importance of asking people to vote. It's as simple as that. We want to have an engaged electorate. We want to have people who care about our system going out and voting. And typically, if you're an engaged voter, the people around you are as well. If you're the type of person to encourage people to go vote, it means the people in your network are more than likely the type of people who are inclined to vote. They're informed. They probably think similarly to you. Ask them to go vote. It's so important that you are texting your friends, your family, your people who you interact with, and asking them to go vote. Which is why it's so frustrating that we have these groups in the Republican sphere who will spend all this money trying to oust incumbents, spend all this money trying to defeat elected office holders. And then when it comes to the general and the primary, they spend all that money trying to get their candidate in there. That when it comes to the general election, they don't come together. I'm looking at Grassroots America, We the People. I'm looking at the True Texas Project. I'm looking at the Tim Dunn family in Midland. These are all groups that has been reported over the past few weeks have spent out mailers encouraging people to vote for some Republicans, but not all of them. The Dunn family in particular, and the Dunn family is known for having bankrolled Defend Texas Liberty and the TUCM, whatever they're calling themselves. I don't know what that acronym means. It's the they change the name every once in a while. It's the group that was the main money behind making sure Ken Paxton stayed in office and didn't get impeached, and the same group behind meeting with Nick Fuentes to try and get their voter data. Whatever. But this group is still run and financed by the Dunn family out of Midland. And the Dunn family sent out a mailer for Midland that explicitly left off and kind of massaged not supporting the Republican candidate for county commissioner. That person's my friend. I take that personally. I don't know if he does. He probably doesn't because he's out there and knows a little bit more about the scenario. But I take that kind of stuff personally. Like, we're talking about making sure that we have a complete majority on a major Texas county, and you're messing with it because it helps your bottom line to make sure that Midland does things exactly the way you want them to. You get your rent seeking, you do your crony capitalism out there, and you get the things you need. I mean, that speaks to your character, and it speaks to who you are as a man and who you are as a people, and not in a good way. You should probably get right with that. If you're going to be getting this involved in Republican politics, running the ads that you're running, people are going to remember that kind of slight and are going to bring it back up. And I hope you learn a lesson from it at some point. I'm not sure who will teach it to you, but I hope you do. But right now, the Republicans are fighting over a bunch of different issues. A lot of people have pretty safe seats, and they're fighting about some other stuff. There is a man who's on death row. He's about to be executed. And there are some machinations happening that have prevented him from being executed. This man is convicted of shaking his baby girl to death, effectively. Shaking her so hard and abusing her to a degree in which the injuries caused her to die. It's a heinous crime he was convicted of about 22 years ago. A lot of the stuff surrounding the science behind shaken baby syndrome has come into question. And in this case in particular, there may have been some extenuating circumstances that may have led the jury to convict him on things beyond the shaken baby syndrome. But the Texas legislature passed a law. Basically, it's called a junk science law, where the appeals courts are supposed to take into account the fact that some things that are bleeding edge science, especially when it comes to death penalty, over the years, they need to be reevaluated as the appeals process for those convictions is adjudicated. This past couple of weeks, the Court of Criminal Appeals, which is the highest court for criminal cases in Texas, came out and said, hey, let's get rid of one of these convictions, or let's retry it, or whatever. But they didn't do on another. This guy's one guy named, I think his name is Robert Robertson, but that sounds fake now that I say it out loud. I've only ever read his name. I don't know much about the case in particular. I see all the stuff I see on Twitter. Well, here's what I know. The Supreme Court of the United States and the highest courts in Texas declined to give the man a reprieve. Governor Abbott never chimed in, but also we were getting to the last possible moments when a legislative committee headed by Joe Moody and Jeff Leach out of Plano issued a subpoena to the man and filed a case in several places to try, and I think it started in Travis County, to stop the execution while that subpoena was pending. This effectively created a small constitutional crisis in Texas. We're talking about checks and balances. The legislature checks the judiciary, checks the executive, and vice versa, and in between. The legislature effectively is trying to tell the judiciary, you got this one wrong. We passed this law. You're not interpreting it the way we thought you would. We want time to pass another law before you kill this guy. We want you to relook at this case in particular. I don't know if that's outside the bounds of how our system is supposed to work. Governor Abbott, Ken Paxton, members of the executive branch have come out and said this was a travesty. This is something the legislature shouldn't have done. Because the Texas Supreme Court, which is the highest civil court in the land, and administrators think when it comes to issues between state agencies, has come in and said they're going to put a stay on it as they figure out this issue. Now they've asked that this happen with all due speed, which is judicial speak for get your ass in gear. Now, I am okay with the current proceedings, how they're happening. I think this is an interesting, albeit an odd way for it to come about, way to kind of figure out how these different powers that these different branches have should work with one another. I think that I don't know how I think they should come out. I think a lot of it's fact dependent. When it comes to a criminal case, when it comes to the death penalty, the facts of the case matter. I've read through some of it, and some of it looks, depending on who you're reading it from. If you're getting it from Texas Scorecard and Michael Quinn Sullivan, you want the guy to burn alive. If you're reading it from the people who are making the case that the evidence was doctored or poorly presented, you think that the death penalty might be the worst thing that's ever happened because an innocent person might die. A jury looked at this, but it was 22 years ago. I don't know how to feel about it. I know that generally speaking, I'm for the death penalty. I think that there are crimes heinous enough where somebody should be deprived of their life for having committed them. But I also want to be very, very sure of any of those convictions, any of those punishments, because I don't think any innocent person should ever be put to get death errantly. So it's hard to reconcile sometimes when there is a borderline case like this, what the best course of action is. And we have a justice system that's supposed to get us there. I don't know how good that system is in Texas because I'm not an attorney. I do know that if you're a proponent of the death penalty, if enough political will is behind the other side, and you kill somebody that they're able to determine conclusively after the fact was innocent, which is going to happen inevitably, but we want to minimize that if you're for the death penalty. You want to, like, when that happens, the death penalty be over forever for everybody. We're looking at the long-term implications of what this means. I am more of an inclination of just making prison for people who have been committed of certain levels of crimes miserable. Not cruel, but miserable. You're going to live the rest of your life. You're not going to interact with people more than 23, 2.5 hours a day. You're going to see the sun X amount of hours a week. You're going to eat the same meal or the same 3 meals every day for the rest of your life. You're just going to have a routine. I think there is more in making people suffer with their consequences than there is in killing them. The stats bear it out. The death penalty doesn't reduce crime. It doesn't make people less likely to commit the crime. So I think when we get to certain levels of crimes, it's more about what makes society feel better, more secure. What makes society actually more secure. And I don't think we've actually seen what does that, and we need to figure it out a little bit better. But I think that's kind of where I'm at on the issue. But it's taking up a lot of airspace. I've taken up a lot of airspace talking about it, and I think that that's a travesty because we are week and a half away from the election. It's going to have far more impact on every one of our lives. And Republicans are fighting over this. Some of them think it's a worthy cause. And I'm not going to make anybody who's on either side of those camps happy with anything I've said in this little diatribe of mine. But let's do some continuances now that this stuff has happened as it's happened, and just punt it until after the election. And let's go knock on some doors, please, for the love of God. Because Kamala's surging, so is Colin Allred. Depending on what poll you look at or which early voting center you're getting your data from, it's going to be a close election. We don't know how close. We don't know how much the rural counties are going to turn out. We don't know how Latinos are going to break. We don't know how women are going to break. We don't know what's resonated with who or where. Texas has been poorly polled. It always is. Even when there's money here. Harris is coming to Texas today, as this is being recorded. So is Trump. They're both spending time here doing stuff. Now, Trump is here to record with Joe Rogan, a slightly larger podcast than my own, but nonetheless, he's coming here to record with Joe Rogan. Decided to skip my invite. I'm sad about it. I had some great questions prepared, like, how do you get your hair to whatever? But Kamala's coming here. Apparently, she's having Beyonce come out, which it's a great guest. I don't know the last time we had a Texas presidential candidate try to win Texas. Probably Clinton in 92 or Dukakis in 88. It's been a while. I see far more Allred signs in my battleground county. No, I see far more Republican signs generally than I do Democrats. But I've not seen a single Trump sign or Allred sign. Or sorry, Cruz sign. Now, yard signs don't win elections. Both of their name IDs are through the roof. And a lot of times campaigns would have name ID that's nearly universal understand that a yard sign should probably be more of a fundraising tool. But I'm not seeing any, which means you're not even fundraising in Texas, at least at that level. And that, there's a certain level of it where that's a problem. Now, I've seen a ton of ads both ways in my, once again, battleground county for the Senate. I'm not seeing a bunch of anything really for, except for the national ads for the presidency. I don't think Kamala's playing here. I think she's coming here to help Allred because there's a chance that they flip Texas. I don't think the chance is high. They've not spent a lot of money here. I'm not saying a ton of money here, and they need to spend a ton of money to really flip it, unless there's a wave. If there's a blue wave in this election, we're going to lose Texas in the Senate. I'm just saying it now. And the Texas House will be, if we keep it, will be pretty closely divided. If there's a red wave, we'll just keep going on business as usual. We'll go back to fighting each other, ignore how close we came to losing grasp on Texas yet again. But it's real out there, guys, and we need to be cognizant of it. But all that to say is there are 10 days left until the election. 10, 11, whatever. In the past 8 years, this is almost certainly Donald Trump's last go, regardless. He'd be 82 on the next go, and he's already starting to show little signs of age. past 9 years of politics have been mostly dedicated to what Trump's going to do, even when Biden's been president. Things are going to about to change, even if Trump wins or loses. A lot of the Trump coalition doesn't like each other. We can see that just from things I mentioned before. If you look at Twitter, you see the people who are in his orbit, who are all quote unquote MAGA, mega MAGA, whatever. And a lot of them hate each other. And those people, as soon as Trump's out of the picture, are going to turn on each other and fall into their own camps. And the Republican Party is going to be fractured again. And a lot of people are looking to 11 days, 12 days, 13 days from now and positioning themselves. And I'm just telling them, for the love of God, please focus on November 5th. Regardless of the outcome, the same thing's going to happen on November 6th. If you haven't positioned yourself well enough by now, you're not going to do anything better between now and then. Focus on winning this election. Focus on winning down ballot, regardless. If Trump wins, we're going to lose a ton of seats in the 26th election. If Kamala wins, Democrats are going to lose a ton of seats in that election. We need to build up an advantage now. We either need to win seats to keep Kamala from being able to take over and do like stuff with the filibusterless Senate, or we need to have a big enough margin that we can withstand whatever happens in the midterms in 2026. It doesn't matter. We have to depend on one another to at least turn out to vote each other for the general election. I don't know how to get this through to everybody's thick heads. Whether you're a scorecard, DTL, Phelan, Abbott, Huffines, West, I don't care how you align in Texas. I don't care if you love Matt Gaetz or if you really, really, really like Thomas Massey or, I don't know, somebody in Congress that's kind of McConnell. It doesn't matter. The Democrats are going to be passing bigger government programs. They're going to be creating new government programs. They're going to be expanding government agencies. They're going to be putting in liberal judges. They're going to be doing all of this stuff to roll back any conservative initiatives or put things in place to do it if Kamala wins. Or they're going to be blocking any type of hope Trump has at passing any sort of agenda. Any agenda. We have to be focusing on the next 10 days, if you're a conservative, on getting things across the finish line. It is beyond frustrating to see everyone getting at each other's throats still. There was no kumbaya. I don't know whose fault it is. I don't care. Come together. Go vote. Go vote for the Republican ticket. Up and down the ballot. Encourage all your friends to do it. Call and text them to do it. I'm sorry if you're a Democrat listening to this show. Or if you're a Democrat listening to this show, be happy because of how frustrated I am at this. If you're a Republican, I'm going to tell it to you again. Go vote. Do it. Get all your friends to do it. Don't tell them, oh, don't vote for that one Republican. They'll get confused. Straight ticket. Anywhere they live. Figure it out in the primary. Some of them are criminals. We don't know it yet, but some of them are going to be criminals. They'll get convicted. Sort that stuff out later. Get people elected in the elections in which they can get elected. That's your job. That's it. If not, you're not a Republican. You're just a person who's trying to make money off of talking about shit. So that's my message. That's my closing message. I'll probably do one more next week. probably be pretty similar. And then I'll start talking about all the wildness that's been happening behind the scenes that I've tried to keep off of this show because I wanted people to focus on winning the elections. We'll start talking about the Senate, the speaker's race. We'll start talking about committee shuffling and rules changes and the type of legislation that's going to be prioritized depending on who gets elected, when, where, how, why, and whatever. But until then, let's go get some Republicans elected. It's called the Seeing Red podcast. Let's do that, and let's stop trying to play. I don't even know. But thank you so much for listening. I appreciate all of our listeners, all of our watchers, all of whatever. You can reach us. You can want to send me an email. It's host@seeingredpodcast.com. You can follow me at Twitter at GWFulce or at the Seeing Red Pod. On Twitter, you can find me on either of those platforms for the podcast or through my personal account. It doesn't really matter. I'm happy to talk to you. Happy to listen to you. Happy to hear you say your opinion on any given issue. If you're interested on coming on the show, doesn't matter if you're elected, if you represent a group, or if you're just a person who has an interesting thing to say. I love to have people on. I love to talk to people. I love to do this with somebody instead of by myself. So let me know. And we wish you the best, but only if you vote. If you don't vote, I don't really wish you anything. All right. Bye, guys.
You've been listening to the Seeing Red podcast. It's always Texas politics and beyond. We present the facts and opinions. The Seeing Red podcast with your host, Andy Turner and Garrett Fulce. Thank you, and tune in next week. And please do us a favor. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.